5 signs you need the courage to be disliked, and why it will change your life. All right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about something that's probably holding you back more than you realize: the fear of being disliked. Now, most of us wouldn't admit it, but deep down, we're all wired to seek approval. We want to fit in, to be liked, to be accepted. And that's natural. It's part of our evolutionary programming. But here's the thing: living your life trying to make everyone like you is a recipe for unhappiness. Why? Because when you're constantly bending yourself to fit into other people's expectations, you lose touch with who you really are. So, here's the big question I want you to think about throughout this video: how much of your life is spent trying to be liked by people who don't even really matter? Let's be honest, your energy, your time, your attention, they're all precious. And yet, if you're like most people, a huge chunk of your mental bandwidth is spent worrying about what others think of you. Maybe it's the way you dress, the way you talk, the job you have, or even the things you post on social media. But here's the hard truth that most people don't want to face: you can't control how people see you. No matter what you do, some people will like you, and some people won't. So why do we keep trying? Because we've been conditioned to believe that being liked means we're valuable. And being disliked? Well, that feels like rejection. But here's what I've learned: the fear of being disliked is one of the biggest barriers to living an authentic life. And the moment you stop caring about pleasing everyone is the moment you start getting closer to the life you're truly meant to live. Now, let's get into the first sign that you need the courage to be disliked. You constantly seek validation. How often do you find yourself double-checking your decisions with others? Maybe you're always second-guessing yourself, wondering if you're doing the right thing based on what someone else might think. This is a sign that you're not living from your own center. You're living from the outside in, letting other people's opinions dictate your choices. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard said, "Once you label me, you negate me." And that's what we do to ourselves when we constantly look for validation. We allow others to define who we are.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
But here's the deeper question: whose approval are you really seeking? Is it your friends, your family, or maybe it's society at large? The truth is, we're all trying to live up to some invisible standard that was never really ours to begin with. We're trying to play a role that keeps us in the good graces of others, but at what cost? Every time you seek validation outside yourself, you're abandoning your own wisdom, your own intuition. The second sign that you need the courage to be disliked: you avoid conflict at all costs. Now, nobody likes conflict, but when you're terrified of being disliked, you go out of your way to avoid it. You bite your tongue when you should speak up. You say yes when you really mean no, and over time, this chips away at your sense of self. You start to feel like a ghost in your own life, always doing what others expect, never what you truly want. But here's the paradox: avoiding conflict doesn't create peace. It creates resentment, both towards yourself and towards others. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you stood up for something you believed in, even if it meant someone else wouldn't like it? If you can't remember, that's a sign that you've been living in the shadow of other people's expectations. And the longer you stay there, the further you drift from your truth. Let's move to the third sign: you're constantly exhausted. You might not make the connection right away, but think about it: how much mental energy do you spend trying to manage other people's perceptions of you? Whether it's saying the right thing, doing the right thing, or just trying to keep everyone around you happy, it's draining. And it's not sustainable. Living in fear of being disliked puts you in a constant state of tension. You're always on guard, always performing. And eventually, that leads to burnout, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Take a moment to reflect. What would it feel like to live without that pressure? Imagine waking up tomorrow and not caring if someone disagrees with you or if someone doesn't like the way you live your life. That's freedom. And that's what you gain when you have the courage to be disliked. The fourth sign: you're not pursuing what really matters to you. When you're too focused on being liked, you tend to make safe choices. You choose the path that will get the least resistance, the one that will keep you in everyone's good graces. But that often means ignoring your true passions, your true calling. You might have dreams, goals, or aspirations that don't fit into the box other people have put you in. But instead of pursuing them, you hold back because you're afraid of what people will think. This is where the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche comes in. Become who you are. That's a call to stop living for others and start living for yourself. The power of authenticity: how embracing dislike helps you find your true self. All right, let's keep going. We've already touched on how fear of being disliked holds you back, but now we're going to dig into why embracing that fear, leaning into it, can actually help you find your true self. Because here's the deal: you can't be fully authentic if you're constantly worried about how people see you. Authenticity requires courage. It requires the bravery to show up exactly as you are, without needing to conform to anyone else's expectations. But why is authenticity so powerful? Let's break it down. When you live authentically, you start aligning your actions, your words, and your choices with your core values. You stop playing the game of trying to be liked, and instead, you focus on being honest with yourself. And that's where real freedom comes in. No more pretending. No more bending yourself into shapes that don't fit just to make others comfortable. But here's a deep question: how much of your life is spent playing a role that isn't really you? Think about it. At work, in your social circle, even with family, how often do you feel like you're saying or doing things just to fit in? Now, imagine what it would be like if you didn't have to wear those masks anymore. If you could show up as your true self, knowing that not everyone will like you, and that's okay. Here's where we hit the fourth sign that you need the courage to be disliked. You feel disconnected from yourself. This can be subtle. It's not always something that hits you like a ton of bricks. But over time, when you're constantly living for others, something starts to feel off. You might not even be able to put your finger on it, but there's this underlying sense that you're not living your real life. And that's because you're not. You're living a watered-down version, edited for public approval. When you embrace the possibility of being disliked, you're no longer held hostage by other people's opinions. You start living from a place of truth, and that truth brings clarity. You begin to see what really matters to you, what makes you come alive, and what you need to let go of in order to live a more fulfilling life. Yes, this will mean losing some people along the way. Some people won't like the real you, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But the flip side is this: the people who do stick around, the ones who appreciate you for who you truly are, will connect with you on a much deeper level. Think of it this way: do you want shallow approval from many, or deep connection with a few? When you stop trying to be liked by everyone, you create space for authentic relationships. And those are the relationships that actually matter. They're the ones that will support you, challenge you, and help you grow into the person you're meant to be. Here's a profound insight: being disliked doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, it often means you're doing something right. People are uncomfortable with authenticity because it shines a light on their own lack of it. When you live authentically, you become a mirror for others. Some people will be inspired by that, and others will feel threatened. That's not your problem. As the philosopher Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, you have to be willing to let go of external validation if you want to grow. The fifth and final sign that you need the courage to be disliked, you're not taking risks. This is a big one. When you're too focused on being liked, you play it safe. You stick with what's familiar, what's comfortable, and what's socially acceptable. But here's the thing, nothing extraordinary comes from staying in your comfort zone. If you want to live a bold, adventurous, and meaningful life, you have to be willing to take risks. And that means risking rejection, criticism, and yes, being disliked. So here's the challenge. Are you willing to take a risk, knowing that it might make some people uncomfortable? If the answer is yes, then you're already on the path to real freedom. The liberation of letting go, why the courage to be disliked, leads to true happiness, all right. Now that we've laid down the foundation, let's dive into the part that really hits home, why having the courage to be disliked is the key to true happiness. It sounds counterintuitive, right? We've been conditioned to think that happiness comes from being liked, accepted, and validated by others. But here's the ironic twist: the more you chase after being liked, the further you get from genuine happiness. Here's why: when you live for others' approval, you're not living for yourself. You're living a life that's dictated by external forces, constantly reacting to what others think of you. And here's the harsh truth: you will never make everyone happy. No matter how hard you try or how much you conform, someone, somewhere, will always find a reason to disapprove or criticize. So, if you hinge your happiness on being liked, you're setting yourself up for endless frustration and disappointment. Here's a deep question for you to reflect on: what would your life look like if you didn't care about trying to please everyone? Really think about that. How would your choices change? How would your relationships shift? When you stop needing to be liked, something profound happens. You reclaim your power. You start living life on your own terms, guided by your own values, desires, and intuition. And that's where authentic happiness comes from, not from external validation, but from internal alignment. You stop being a puppet of other people's opinions and start being the author of your own story. Now, let's talk about the mental and emotional freedom that comes with this shift. When you stop obsessing over what others think, you free up so much mental energy. Think about it: how much of your day is spent replaying conversations in your head, worrying about whether someone misunderstood you, or stressing about what you should have said or done differently? That constant overthinking is exhausting. It drains you. But when you give yourself permission to be disliked, you release that burden. You stop overanalyzing every interaction, and you start living more in the present moment. Letting go of the need to be liked also opens up space for creativity and boldness. When you're no longer playing it safe to avoid upsetting or alienating others, you start taking more risks that align with your true self. This might mean pursuing a career path that others don't understand, ending relationships that no longer serve you, or speaking up for something you believe in, even if it goes against the grain. And yes, these choices might lead to some people disliking you. But here's the thing: that's a small price to pay for the freedom to live authentically. Here's another deep question for you: is it worth sacrificing your happiness just to maintain the approval of people who don't truly understand or support you? When you think about it, the answer becomes pretty clear. The people whose approval you're so afraid of losing, are they really the ones who matter? Because the truth is, the people who are meant to be in your life, the ones who genuinely care about you, will stick around even when you show them your true self. In fact, they'll appreciate you more for it. And the ones who fall away, well, maybe that's for the best. As the saying goes, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Letting go of the need to be liked is also a radical act of self-love. It's about choosing you, your peace, your happiness, your truth over the fleeting and conditional approval of others. It's about saying, I am enough as I am, whether people like it or not, and that's a powerful place to be. When you truly believe that you are enough, you stop chasing external validation, and you start living with an inner sense of worth that no one can take away. So here's the final question I want to leave you with: what would happen if you started living your life with the courage to be disliked? What if, starting today, you stopped worrying about what others think and started prioritizing your own happiness, your own fulfillment? It's a scary thought, but it's also incredibly liberating. At the end of the day, the courage to be disliked is really the courage to be yourself. And when you do that, you unlock a kind of happiness that's not dependent on anyone else, a happiness that comes from being aligned with who you truly are. Thanks for watching, and remember, the path to true happiness isn't about being liked by others, it's about being true to yourself.